Well, good morning. My name is Woody Kingman, and I am honored to represent the Blake Alumni Board and the Office of Institutional Advancement, which sponsors these events known as Breakfast at Blake. This is our first one of the new year, and we've got a great slate coming up for the 2018-2019 year, including our next breakfast, reunion edition, which will be just 3 weeks from now on Friday, October 5th. And it's going to be a great one. We will honor our Alumna Athlete of the Year, Catherine Moose, class of 2003, and our Alumnus of the Year, Dr. Don McCarthy, Blake, class of 1966. Man, that was a long time ago. Don is a distinguished researcher, astronomer, and lecturer at the University of Arizona's Steward Observatory, and he will give a talk entitled Thinking Differently, My Journey in Space-Time. So I hope you'll join us in 3 weeks back at the Blake Hopkins campus. Well, today I'm delighted that you could all join us to hear from Blake's head of school, Dr. Ann Stavney. Ann, since joining Blake in 2012, has led many new and powerful changes across the school's 3 divisions. Ann's deep experience in and passion for developing curriculum has resulted in transformative initiatives, including our new global immersion programs. Ann has also led a deepened investment in financial assistance, helping to move the number of students who receive need-based financial aid from 205 students when she arrived to 325 this year. She's also championed our $80 million Excellence Accelerated campaign that recently reached $77.8 million, a remarkable achievement for our school, and I promised her that we would reach $80 million before breakfast was over. Locally and nationally, Ann contributes to and stays connected to the field of education. Currently, she serves on the leadership boards of the Independent School Experiential Education Network, the Independent Metro Athletic Council, and the Minnesota Association of Independent Schools. She also regularly presents at national conferences and issues relevant to PK to 12 education and independent school education. Ann's leadership and commitment to Blake is both impressive and inspiring, and so I'm very pleased to welcome Ann to the podium this morning.
Good morning, and thank you, Woody, for that introduction, and glad to know that we'll be finishing the campaign this morning. That's awesome. I wanted to start with a few highlights of the opening of school. We started about 3 weeks ago, and just to share a few things that are going on, and then I'll move to my remarks for today. We welcomed 180 new students this fall, and this is from an admissions cycle that saw the highest number of applications and the greatest selectivity that we've ever had in the history of the school. So we're thrilled about that, and what that means is we're able to have the most talented and capable students at Blake. We have 1,371 students enrolled, and we also were able to exceed our enrollment goal and our net tuition revenue goal. So this has been achieved all while increasing our financial assistance budget. We're close to $8 million now, and so we're steadily building that budget largely through the campaign. And as Woody mentioned, we have reached $77.8 million, and this is thanks to the generosity of many of you in the room today and to the Blake community. It's really remarkable, and we're really proud of the impact it's already having on our students and the teaching and learning at Blake. So thank you. In this context of a thriving school community, I wanted to spend some time this morning sharing some current questions, topics that we're asking in the field of education and in independent school education in particular. And I'll touch on 3, not because they're an exhaustive list by any means. Quite a few hit the cutting room floor, so I needed to kind of narrow them down. But I wanted to give you a sense of the range and diversity of things that we're grappling with in schools today. So let me start with student health and wellness. and the conversations that schools across the country are having about how to support and promote student health and wellness. The central question, I think, that really is the pivot point for our conversations is how can we best support our students given the rising rates of anxiety and depression among teens? Health and wellness are terms that we use for a wide range of aspects of mental health, social emotional learning, physical fitness. And many schools have come to focus on wellness as a holistic concept that integrates this mental and physical well-being into the curriculum of the school. And this expansion in focus from physical fitness, social emotional learning, and then to mental health is largely in response to the depression and anxiety we're seeing among teens in our schools. And also, we are seeing increasingly students and families seeking behavioral health services and psychological counseling from their school community. Few statistics I want to share with you, national statistics, and then focus in on Blake. So the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services data reflects that 12.5% of young people between 12 and 17 years old have experienced at least one major depressive episode in the last year. Nearly 9%, that's about 2 million kids, report that their depression affects their ability to function day to day. Girls report higher rates generally than boys, with about 27% of 15-year-old girls reporting depression. Independent school data and research really parallels these national trends. And I'm on many listservs and heads of school discussions, and in a recent poll among us, 88% of my colleagues in independent schools across the country cite anxiety as a student wellness issue. And 49% of them cite depression as a serious challenge to student health. Last fall, we conducted an independent school health check survey among our 9th through 12th graders. We did it in 2012, do it again in 2017. The student self-reporting at Blake reflects what we're seeing and reflects national trends. So a year ago, about 32% of our upper school students said that they had received a professional diagnosis of depression and or anxiety. So we know that mental health issues impede student learning and they impede student growth. And if we're able to support students, get them the appropriate help, the more likely they will be able to be engaged and successful learners. So what are we doing at Blake? We focus, I would say our primary tool, our most important tool is the close teacher-student relationships that we have. And this is because research shows that these close adult-student relationships are critical for students and for students ensuring that they have an adult with whom they feel they can talk. Also, research demonstrates that there's a positive protective value of students knowing how to ask for help. So not only having an adult that they feel they can talk to, but also knowing how to ask for help from an adult. This is what is known as help-seeking behavior. So how are we teaching that help-seeking behavior? We work really hard to surround kids with caring adults who know them well. And this is certainly teachers, but extends to coaches, grade deans, learning specialists, counselors, college counselors, and staff. I would say in addition, and that's a theme from PK through 12, in addition, we're focusing on this issue in developmentally appropriate ways in each division, lower school, middle school, and upper school. So I want to touch on what we're doing. In lower school, we have the welcome, safety, and respect rule. It provides the foundation for how we treat others and how we treat ourselves. And I think if there's anything a child goes away with is from the lower school, the welcome, safety, and respect rule. It's everywhere. It informs everything that we do. In middle school, we have participated in the Making Caring Common project that's developed out of the Harvard Graduate School of Education. It helps educators promote caring and respect. It also enlists parents to help teach students caring and respect, and a number of you are part of the parent committee. Thank you. One exercise that we did last year as part of the Making Caring Common project I wanted to share with you, because it gets at this: how are we promoting and building these close teacher-student relationships? We put the names of all of our middle school students on big Post-it paper, and we asked all of our middle school faculty to go around and put a dot next to those students they had a connection with and they felt that they really knew. We also had students do a survey and identify 2 adults who they felt they could go to and seek out for help, and that really knew them. What we did was put together the data from those 2 surveys, and we were able to identify a handful of children who were not connected to any adult. No adult had put a dot, and they had not identified any adults. And so we were able to make a plan for them. How are we going to ensure that we bring them in, that we help them feel connected and help them feel that they're known? We will do this exercise again this fall and then again in the spring, because we want to ensure that our measures for building these relationships are effective. In the upper school, we've participated in the Challenge Success Survey, and it's a program developed out of Stanford University. It posits that our singular focus on academic achievement, often taking the form of test scores, grades, PSATs, SATs, ACTs, that singular focus has resulted in a lack of attention to other components of a successful life. The ability to be independent, to be adaptable, to be ethical, and to be engaged critical thinkers. As I said earlier, we did the Independent School Health Check in 2012 and 2017. This allows us, it's an excellent instrument, and it allows us to compare ourselves to 5 years ago. And it also allows us to compare with other similar independent schools across the country. So it's an excellent benchmarking tool. Their analysts also give us a set of suggestions as a result of both commendations and suggestions that the data bears out. In upper school advisory groups this year, students are exploring the Project Wayfinder curriculum. It's been developed out of the Stanford Center for Adolescence, and it's a program that's based on research that shows that students have anxiety and depression not only because they have too much to do, it's also because they don't know why they're doing it. And so this curriculum focuses on developing a deeper sense of purpose. And finally, something else that we're doing at Blake is our school committee of the board this year is charged with doing a deep dive into these issues. The goal of this is to recognize our strengths and also make recommendations for continued growth. And as part of this work, we are reaching out to other independent schools who have innovative wellness models and programs, and learning from them. So the second topic I'd like to touch on is school safety and security. And the central question here is, how do we maintain a safe campus while providing a welcoming school culture? With the alarming increase of gun violence in schools, our ideas about safety and security have been forever changed as educators, and so I think school administrators, this is forefront in our minds, is the safety and security of our students and our employees. And we ask the question, how do we ensure their safety? And part of there are many questions about this that are included in the national debate around how best to do this, how best to protect them without creating a sense of alarm, particularly among our youngest students, and also without creating a sense of being a fortress and not being welcoming and inclusive. I've noticed a lot of chatter on the listservs about the ways to increase campus security. And a statistic that just was shared last week, you might be interested to know, about 30% of independent schools have armed security guards. The other 70% do not, because they do not feel it's consonant with school culture. We're in that 70%. At Blake, we've enhanced our safety and security over the past years in significant ways, and as we've made these decisions, we've needed to weigh the safety and security measure we're contemplating against the potential impact on school culture, and also, of course, the impact on the budget, because there's a financial expense for each of these tactics and technologies. In 2012-13, the school brought in a security expert who's now a current parent and in the room. Thank you, Michael. He conducted a comprehensive security audit on all of our campuses, he and his team, and made recommendations for change. And we have acted on many, many of these recommendations, including increasing campus security staff, implementing a background check system for all volunteers who work with students, conducting active shooter training for our employees, replacing older security cameras with a state-of-the-art system. And this year, many of you are aware, we launched a new access card system for middle school and upper school students and staff, and reduced the number of entry points on all of the campuses. We also launched a new visitor management system. What it does is it scans a visitor's driver's license or state-issued ID and compares it to a national database of registered sex offenders. Once cleared, visitors are issued a picture ID card to be worn while they're on campus. Last year, we hired a director of safety, security, and transportation, Mike Feinberg, who is a law enforcement professional and also has experience as an agent with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. He's been charged with and has shown outstanding leadership in leading these efforts and taking us to the next level in terms of safety and security on campus. We have also charged a board committee, our Safety, Transportation, and Facilities Committee, with oversight of our strategy and our long-range planning. Physical safety is critical to the security, certainly. We have learned, though, going back to number one, that the relationships between teachers and students are just as important, if not more important, to our safety and security. We have long-standing relationships also with law enforcement and first responders in the three cities, Minneapolis, Hopkins, and Wayzata, where our campuses are located. They are also present at law officers at athletic competitions, concerts, dances, graduation and school performance, and they provide added security and crowd control for us. It's important to keep in mind that these technologies and tactics are kind of erroneously chosen often over approaches that have shown to be effective at reducing school violence. And that includes social emotional learning, robust student support, and classroom instruction that helps kids stay away from violence, substance use and abuse, and risky sexual behaviors. Maybe some of you saw an op-ed in the New York Times last week. Mikhail Keel, she's a professor of human behavior at the University of Chicago. She was writing on this very point, and she writes, "Violence prevention should be part of a whole educational approach, not a separate law enforcement mandate. Increased safety will come from softening, not hardening our schools." When we read about this distressing news of violence at other schools, I'm incredibly grateful for the community that we have, the community of adults who are here, they're committed to, they're passionate about seeing and hearing and valuing every student. And if we're not capturing every student, doing something about it. So this network of relationships will continue to be at the heart of our safety and security program. So on to topic 3, assessment and grading. And I want to just define a few terms before we move into this topic. Assessment, we have come to use that term to refer to a class activity by which a student's knowledge and skills are evaluated. It might take the form of a test. It also might be an essay, it might be a lab report, it might be an oral presentation. Those are all assessments of a student's knowledge and skills. Grading. How do we define grading? I'm using the term grading here to refer to the letter grades that go on a student's transcript that intend to reflect their achievement in a specific course. So the letter grades on the traditional transcript. So within that context, here's the central question that we're discussing today. How do we emphasize skills and habits of mind we know best prepare students for a complex global world? So there's an active discussion about how we assess students, the ways we assess them, and how well does a high school transcript reflect a student's growth? How does it reflect their learning? How does it reflect their strengths? And I think most importantly, how does it reflect their habits of mind? The traditional transcript, which is used by the majority of high schools since the industrial age, too often asks educators to rank and sort students and to boil down this child's passions and strengths and growth to a single letter. And this is in exchange for cultivating and capturing their full breadth of capabilities. In recognition of the limitations of the traditional transcript, a movement has been underway to shift toward what is called a mastery or a competency-based education model. This alternative model has a crediting and transcript design that is organized around performance areas rather than academic departments. And it's organized around mastery standards rather than grades. Competency areas are identified by each school. Certainly, there are things that are consonant with our mission and our values and our commitment to pluralism. For us, it might include, these competency areas might include things like analytical and creative thinking, complex communication, oral and written communication, leadership and teamwork, and digital and quantitative literacy. Over 250 leading independent schools have formed a network called the Mastery Transcript Consortium. And the purpose of this consortium is to explore the future path for this mastery-based education model. And Blake, we're an active member of the network. The larger goal is, it again refers back to number 1, is to create a more humane and a more effective and meaningful tool for inspiring student learning and inspiring mastery in students in areas where they are passionate and they can go deeper and they can really get inspired by what they're learning in those particular areas. So I know some of you are out there thinking, what about colleges and universities? Where are they in this? For them, competency-based transcripts provide much more comprehensive information on a high school student's knowledge, on their skills, and their habits of mind upon graduation. We have been engaged at Blake in conversations about mastery-based or competency-based learning and assessment for a number of years now. Last year, we had all of our academic administrators, a group of 30 of us, learn about this particular mastery education model. What could it offer our students, and how does it support educators, teachers, in facilitating the kind of learning that they know is best for students? This year, we have a PK-12 faculty task force working to identify what would those 6 to 8 core competencies be that we most value and seek to develop in our students. And no matter where this goes, and we don't have concrete plans for the future, we're kind of taking it a step at a time. The conversations alone around what do we really value? What are we actually trying to teach our students? Who do we want them to be upon graduation, and what do we want them to do? The analysis alone has been tremendously valuable and very, very rich conversations. As a head of school, I continue to serve with other heads in the Mastery Transcript Consortium to ensure that our path forward keeps what's best for student learning at the center. That's the primary question. And also, what's a good fit for Blake? We anticipate piloting a Mastery Transcript model in 1 grade level, probably 6th grade, in the middle school in the next 2 to 3 years, but we'll see where that goes. That brings me to the end of my remarks this morning. I want to thank you for joining us, and I would be delighted to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Hi. I'm Ron Curley, parent of Lila Curley, just entering kindergarten. There is, I've heard a lot of great things about topic number 1. And everything that you're stating gives a whole lot of good insight about how we're externally managing health and wellness. Mm-hmm. And arguably a small amount of insight as to how the child themselves is managing that from the inside. One of the ways to battle anxiety, depression, stress, worry, etc., is a regular practice of self-assessment and self-critical thinking about one's own actions and behaviors, etc. And the closest thing that I heard was that Stanford program. Mm-hmm. Can you speak a little bit more to how we are educating our children to self-evaluate on a regular basis?
That's a great question, and I completely agree with you that self-evaluation, self-reflection is critical to how am I feeling? Am I being the person I want to be? Am I being the friend I want to be? Am I prioritizing those things that are most important to me? We have implemented a mindfulness curriculum in the middle school, and we do some mindfulness activities in the lower school as well. The mindfulness kind of curriculum, we start every middle school assembly with a mindful moment. And the notion there is to come into the space with all of your colleagues and really look inside and calm yourself down and be fully present in the moment and learn how to put things on shelves so that you can be mentally fully present in the moment and emotionally. So that's part of what we're teaching in classes, and our assembly program is the mindfulness in the middle school. So I think that would probably best address your question. And I see that us expanding it. I know Dennis Gilsdorf in pre-K at Highcroft does mindfulness practices regularly. So do some in the lower school in second and third grade. So.
My name is Maggie Smith. I'm an alum and I'm also a mother of a kindergartner at Highcroft. I'm curious to learn a little bit more about your mastery evaluations. I appreciate you sharing that looking at how we learn and what we're trying to teach children is important, but I also understand there's a practical element as well, as most of us hope that our current students are going to go on to secondary or college graduates.
Right.
So how is this, do you anticipate this being something that you would swap out from a grading system, or would this be something that you would enhance as it progresses?
Great question, and I think I'll just answer it. We don't anticipate ever swapping it out fully. We would offer it as a track in the high school, likely, that you could choose. So if you wanted to choose letter grades, you could go through the competency-based model, you could. We really don't quite know what it might look like and what might fit for us, so we're really exploring that. It needs to be something that faculty, and they're very excited about this, they understand and feel that this is exactly how students learn best, not stressing over that grade, but instead learning those skills, mastering those concepts. So I don't envision ever switching over completely. That's not going to be for us, but an option.
So I have a follow on that. So,
Sure.
So are they mutually exclusive? Could you do both? I mean,
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yes. Oh, in terms of a student?
Right, in one class, would it be a hybrid approach?
Probably not, but we will see. The Mastery Transcript Consortium is working right now on building a database and building the software so that all of this is electronic. And you saw in an earlier slide a sample pie chart. And what would happen is that the college admissions officer could click on the critical thinking and analysis and would come up with a set of curated essays, any number of assessments that the student has selected to give as evidence. And so there's a great deal of depth to what is provided, and you can see there those different pie pieces are for the different competency areas. But that also, the fact that the student chooses those pieces that they're most proud of, it also, again, shifts back to the student independence and really advocacy.
Hi, George Bodum, grandparent, class 54. A month ago, right at the beginning of September, The Economist had an article touting the high achievement of Singapore students. And it said that the Singapore instructional method was the best in the world. Had a bar graph in this article which was about the PISA test.
Yes.
Singapore high number one, followed by Canada and Japan. United States somewhat below average. Connecting to what you just said, the thing that they wanted to make better in Singapore was to reduce student anxiety and depression. But my question is really relating to the PISA test and how Blake is doing relative to that, and does this test really measure what I think it measures as student competency around the world? Maybe you could comment on that.
Sure, thank you, George. We don't give the students the PISA test regularly. It's not something that we choose to do. Lots of debate about what is that test measuring. We know it isn't measuring things like leadership and teamwork. That's not something you can take a test to demonstrate. It isn't measuring things like integrity and ethical decision making. It's not measuring things like resilience and perseverance, which we value all of those things. So I'm not bothered. Blake, I'm sure our kids would do well on that. They do well on standardized tests, very, very well. But that is not what we're seeking to teach them fully. It's one piece of it. That's the academic achievement. So I think that depth, PISA's measuring just one set of skills and knowledge.
I'm interested in some specifics about the discipline that the school exercises today in terms of intellectual content, their ability to handle the classes, and also their social skills so they don't get in the way of the teachers or their other students. When I was at Blake, the only sure way to get thrown out was to be caught smoking in the bathroom.
That still gets you thrown out.
There must be some other norms and specifics that you've addressed. I'm not interested in the names of that,
Right.
but some exact examples of what you and the other teachers have faced and the actions they've taken to say, Johnny or Susie, we think you better pursue your activities at Breck or some other place. Would you?
I'm not going to touch that one, but yes, I mean we have a code of expectation in terms of how students comport themselves. I would say our values that we articulate, which are respect, love of learning, integrity, and courage, underlie how we want students to comport themselves in school and towards each other. We handle individual situations of violation of that individually. And so we hold a high standard, and I would say 98%, 99% of our students believe in that and they enact it. There's a lot of modeling that goes on from older students to younger students. I think that's a huge aspect of the experience at Blake that we don't necessarily recognize. Yesterday I met with a group of seniors and asked them about topic 1 and topic 3. I said, I have a few questions for you. And with topic 3, I said, what is it that the transcript right now, these are all seniors, you're going to have a transcript. What's the most important thing that you've learned at Blake that's been left out, that will be left out of your transcript? It's not reflected there. 2 of them, who are athletes, said that it was the leadership of the older captains that taught them what it meant to include everybody, inspire everybody, and to really bring the team from a group of individuals to a sense of team collaboration. And one of them, who was a captain this year, said, and I'm trying to do that and more. And so that, I think, our kids, we hold them to a high standard, and then they hold themselves to a high standard.
Ben Johnson, wish I was an alum. 2 kids at the upper school. Where does social media fit into the health and anxiety piece? And is Blake doing anything to address that? I don't know if it's too late. Kids are too far down the road at the high school or upper school, but maybe even at the middle school and the lower school, because it feels like that's the hidden cancer in all this stuff, in my general opinion.
Right, and I think and there are all sorts of studies that show that activity on social media really being tied to the number of likes that you're getting, or tied to needing to put images of yourself on, of what you're doing here, there, I'm standing in line there, I'm at the movies. In other words, I have a very active social life. That all of that kind of persona that some kids take a lot of time and energy creating online is not productive. And so we do start in the middle school. We have a eHeart curriculum about using technology. We also have instituted this year, because we've extended laptops to the 6th grade, so we had a chance to reset 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. We are a electronics-free zone. It is at school for school, so we do not have iPhones before school. During recess, the kids are asked to put them away and actually to engage with each other. So, I mean, and it's amazing that you can go by a group of students in the upper school in particular. There'll be 4 of them sitting on a bench, all of them on their phones. And so we're trying to start earlier in the middle school where we have a bit more control of them, frankly, and that we want to help them to develop actual relationships, face-to-face relationships with each other, and not have them so often mediated through a device. A couple of weeks ago, it was in the first week of school, I walked by 2 students who were on a laptop in the hallway, and I got a little ways past and I thought, okay, if anyone's supposed to do something about this, it would be me. And so I went back and I said, so what are you up to here? What are you working on? And they said, we're working on a class project. We were asked to come out here and make a video. I said, excellent, that's great. And then I kept walking by. And what it takes, though, that's just an example, it takes constant vigilance from the adults and all of the adults buying into it as well to reinforce that we value this. We value human connection and using these electronics as tools for learning and not to carry on all of this other business. We do have guidelines around what one posts on social media, and particularly as it affects our community. And we take that very seriously. And back to Kingston's question, students have been disciplined for posting online things that are racist or sexist or homophobic. Those don't align with our values. And they also affect the school culture. So even though it's happening in the electronic realm, the digital realm, it still is affecting us as a community and affecting relationships that students have with each other. And we take that seriously.
Stacey McKay, I've had 3 graduate from Blake and I have a current junior. I'm just curious, do you know if the colleges, especially the elite schools, are at all on board with this idea of a competency assessment as opposed to grades? Are they thinking along those lines at all?
They are, and the early stages of the Mastery Transcript Consortium, we went to a number of colleges and admissions officers in particular and deans to talk about what we're thinking and to understand what are the confines that they have on their end that we need to ensure that this alternative transcript would still allow them to do the work that they need to do. So get this, they need to be able to read the transcript in 2 minutes, get all the information in 2 minutes. If they want to go deeper, they will take more time, but often they don't. So that's one, there are a number of other small tactical things that we have learned. We have on board on the advisory council, and you can go to the Mastery Transcript Consortium, it's mastery.org, and read more about this, but Georgetown, Stanford, University of Chicago are all on board. Very excited about this, as I mentioned earlier. And so there are more and more colleges. There's actually over 100 who have signed a document to say they would commit themselves up front to accepting these transcripts. So that's a very important piece. We don't want to do anything to disadvantage our students, but rather to have the benefits of this alternative model. But yes.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for starting off with the student mental health and anxiety and depression. My question, Jamie Wellick, my daughter's class of 19, and also I have a daughter who's class of 16. And so the question I'll make up is really related to that. I got an answer on how people view Blake's reputation and grades, because I know there's a lot of grade inflation in the world, and I think our college admission staff, which feeds into the anxiety and depression about, I think, some of the stress about transcript. But if they understand that the Blake education is different and better than, and I've heard that message about why we don't really push a lot of the AP and IB types of things, because our classes are better. But on the anxiety and depression I'd like to hear a little bit more of an understanding of what you think personally is contributing to that rise. I've coached college athletes, and it's phenomenal, and it's destructive, and it's a trend. And I would like to hear what you have to say about that. What you think is contributing to anxiety and depression, and what Blake can do about that. Thanks.
I think the Stanford Center for Adolescence and Bill Damon, who is there leading this effort, is really on to the crux of it, which is the busyness is enormous. Again, this group that I met with yesterday, they said, I was talking about self-reflection, and they said, we don't have time to self-reflect. We have to do this and that and this and that. And if you're going to schedule in self-reflection, I can't just drop everything between one test and another activity and hurry up and self-reflect for 20 minutes. That's just, so the sense of busyness is really significant. They feel they need to be busy in order to build a college, an application profile that will interest colleges. And college admissions is changing so rapidly. USC, for example, is a great example of 6 years ago, their admit rate was 24%. Last year, it was 8%. And that is a trend that we're seeing across colleges and universities. And so at the same time that students are feeling like I have to have some kind of hook, I have to have 3,000 hours of service, I have to have, they're also feeling like, and that might not suffice. So I still might not get into a college that I want to. So I think it's that sense of trying so hard but not knowing what the outcome will be that is a huge factor. And then the other is the question of why. The purpose. Am I finding meaning in what I am doing, particularly extracurriculars, or am I doing it to add to my resume? If one finds meaning in what one is doing, there's an entirely different sense of purpose and being filled up from it. And I think that finding the meaning and purpose is also something that is certainly contributing to the anxiety and depression, the lack of it. Mm-hmm. So, all right. Thank you all. Really appreciate you coming, and have a good day.
Thanks. That's terrific. As always, thank you. Really great.